Hello, you wonderful people from the internet. My name is Michael Creek, and today we're going to learn how we can use this to make sounds like this. Hi, this is me with just a quick disclaimer. In the following video, I will be using a Logitech Extreme something something joystick, which you probably don't have at home because this is like ages old. So you might wonder, why the heck am I going to watch a video about a controller that I don't even have? Now, the great thing about the Hi object that we are going to use is that I will show you how you can select your own devices there, and then once you got your devices, all you need to do is make a route object and then give it a bunch of numbers, and so on and so on and so on. Just hang a floating number box below everything, and then just start figuring out what kind of buttons and what kind of different control inputs are on what channels. And I'm sure no matter what you use, even if it's like an Xbox controller or if it's like a computer gamepad or anything, you're going to have enough buttons or XY controllers that you can use them to express yourself. Okay, so the following stuff you need. You need a U menu, which will connect to the second outlet and will go back into the first inlet of the Hi object. You need a message box with pole 20 that you need to press only once, and this will kind of be like a Metro 20. And then you need a message box that goes menu. And you need to hit this once, and it will give you a number of controllers. You just select your controller, and then you should start getting values out of your different channels. If you want to find out how many controls are there in your controller anyway, you can hit info, and when you then hit your command max window, you will see that there is here a list of your different devices. So you can see this device that I'm using is the Logitech Extreme, and it has 25 elements. So in this case, you would go from root 0 to root 24 and just check out what those are and where the ones that you need are. You need 3 toggles that go from 0 to 1, like any kind of button will do. And then you need 4 different continuous controllers, so stuff that goes from 0 to 128 or from 0 to 1 or from 0 to 256, no matter what, because you can just normalize it. Because as soon as you find out the range, for example, in this case it's 0 to 255 usually, I think, when it's in the mood, you just take the highest number and divide by that with a flotation point. So no matter what your controllers are, you're going to get values from 0 to 1, and that is what we are going to work with. So just take your time now, find out what controls you have available, and assign maybe 3 buttons and maybe 4 continuous controllers. So recently I came into possession of some of the Electron boxes, and they're amazing. And I have the analog 4 and not the analog keys, and I thought, damn it, the joystick does look kind of interesting that you have. Why don't I have a joystick like that? And then I thought, hey, come on, what the heck? I can program in Max, so basically I can use any boring old joystick, because there is a object. Let's make a new patcher. And the object we're talking about is just called Hi. It's a human interface. And the cool thing about Hi is that it is able to capture controls from almost every kind of conceivable controller that you can plug into your computer. So for example, your keyboard and your trackpad are all supported, and so is almost everything you plug into your computer with the USB cable. For example, your Xbox 360 controller would work as well, as does this really old Logitech joystick. If you want to have it look a little bit nicer, why not just take a slider, Command I for the commander, tell it to go from 0 to 1, have a floating output, and there you go. So now when we connect this, you can see that the slider is picking up the value. So you have a nice graphical representation. I think, if I remember correctly, these ones are going to be the main joystick. Oh yeah, this one is like the, I think, yaw of your joystick. And again, this goes from 0 to 255. So why not divide it and normalize this output as well. Give it a nice slider. And now you can see that we have this as well. And we're going to do something along those lines for these outputs. Not this one, but these here. So you can see these two outlets are the main axis of the joystick. And because this is kind of a joystick geared towards like flight simulations, this has a very fine granularity of values, so it doesn't just go to 256, but it actually goes to 1024. Well, you know, there is a 0 as well, so now you have this going from 0 to 1, and of course I need a floating point here, and do the same for this. Okay. All right, so now if you want to make these two here be a nice graphical interpretation of what you actually do, there is an object called the picked slider. Basically, picked slider, if you use Ableton Live or anything, you're going to be familiar with XY pads, and it's actually just that, with one output for the x-axis, one for the y-axis, and then of course again we need to tell it which range to be in. Let's see, this is 1, and this is 1. Does it have floating? No, it doesn't have floating. Okay, so instead for demonstration purposes we won't take the normalized output but the regular one. Alright, now you can see when I move the joystick it moves like that. And you can see that this axis is kind of reversed. Well, it's not reversed if you're actually using it as a flight controller, but it's kind of irritating when I use it for programming music. So I will just go back to the commander and reverse the vertical values like this. So now you can see it's kind of in sync with the movement. All right, and the other ones we've chosen actually don't give any kind of signal except for just zeros and ones, because those are buttons, triggers, and if you want to use these, you can just, you know, put a trigger here, and then whenever you press the button, it will light up, and the same goes for this, and that. Okay, and this is as easy as you can set up your human interface device. Now, let's do something with it. Recently, I started experimenting with frequency modulation, synthesis again, and I kind of felt like doing some stuff like that. So we're going to make some frequency modulation. If you haven't heard about FM before, there is a lot of really, really good videos on the subject already, so I'm not going to go into detail a lot. Suffice to say, you basically take different oscillators that modulate each other in pitch. Both oscillators are set to the same speeds, which are the actual frequencies that you want to play, you know, using a keyboard or whatever controller you have. and then because they make a vibrato that is so fast that it's actually in the audible range, you don't actually hear it as a vibrato, but instead you hear a change of timbre, and you can make very, very interesting and metallic sounds with that. So I thought about just using Gen, because I kind of felt like diving into Gen. Again, if you haven't heard of Gen, I'm not an expert either. Basically, it's a kind of sub-language inside of Max that is very similar to Max, but not really, because in reality everything in Gen is actually text-based programming instead of graphic-based programming like we are used to doing. But that's okay. And it's actually very easy to make frequency modulation in Gen, because all you need is one input for your frequency, which we're going to look at later on. You need one input for your modulator, and then you need a third input that is called a modulation index. Basically, whoops, and this just tells you how hard this modulation signal is supposed to modulate this carrier signal. Okay, so the cool thing about FM is that most stuff you can actually make happen with sine waves. The sine object inside of Gen works a little bit weirdly. You can alt-click it and it tells you that it is the sine of the input in radians. Now, what is a radiant? A radiant is basically a piece of a circle. A radian basically is just the radius of your circle. So if you want to make one whole sine wave, you are going to have to have the radius times 2 times pi, because that is what you need for a whole rotation, and one rotation is one cycle of our waveform that we want. So basically, so what we get in our first input is going to be a ramp that goes from 0 to 1 really quickly, and we're going to convert this ramp from 0 to 1 into a whole cycle of the sine wave. So all we need to do is make an expression and give it input 1 times 2 times pi. Luckily, yeah, Gen understands pi, so you just put this into your sine wave, and then we will manually cycle the sine wave around every time our input 1 goes from 0 to 1. To frequency modulate this thing, we are going to add stuff in here with our modulation. So we are going to multiply. Well, first of all, we're going to multiply the modulation input with the index, again, which is supposed to tell us how hard we want to modulate our carrier signal. And then we are going to multiply that with the actual phase of the sine wave that we want. So, and that goes into the output. And that should work, I hope. So you can give this a name, call it like cycles. Oh, I just killed it. No! Let me redo this really quick. Alright, got it. Okay, so this is our Gen object, and to give a ramp into the first input, you can use a phaser tilde, which is a sawtooth. You can check it out with a scope tilde if you want to. The phaser needs a frequency, which we're going to set like this. And now, once we plug it in here, make an easy DAC and enable sound, we should see something. Especially if you put the frequency low, you can see that this is our phaser. It goes from 0 to 1 and back to 0. Now, when you feed this into our cycles object, we see nothing at all. Oh, okay, of course, because we need to add those together instead of multiply them. Alright, so you can see now this is a perfect sine wave that we get. So when you want to listen to them, make it a bit less loud because it's really loud, and add this here. You can hear that's a sine wave, all right. So now the good thing is we already have this here, our, you might call it operator if you're into Yamaha speak. You can just copy it and use this one as a modulator for the second one, and maybe give it the same, well, actually let's copy the phaser as well, but give the phaser the same frequency and do it like this. Enable audio. I'm gonna make it a bit less loud, so it's still a sine wave. And now as soon as I start turning up the modulation index, something's not right here. Okay. Why can I not copy this? Okay, it seems I have to manually copy everything in here, but that's fine. Well, that makes a lot more sense. So now we got it. When we enable, you can see this is our sine wave not being modulated. And then when you start increasing the modulation index, you can see here that the waveform starts to change. And actually, if you use a spectroscope, we will see that you get side bands, which means that different overtones will start being added the more you modulate it. And that's kind of how FM synthesis works. Okay, so I want to use the y-axis of the main controller and convert it to some kind of pitch. So I'm going to take this output. I'm going to take the normalized output that goes from 0 to 1. Maybe do it like this, send pitch. Just to keep it a little bit more tidy. And receive pitch. Alright, now we get 0 to 1s in here, so let's scale them to from maybe 24 to 60, and this is going to be our MIDI notes. And to make this kind of MIDI numbers speak to the phasers, we're just going to need to convert MIDI to frequency, M to F. There you go. And now you can see when I move the joystick, we get frequencies from 32 Hz all the way up to 261. Maybe we can go a bit higher. I don't know, we're not going to play it chromatically anyway. Okay, so this works already. Now I think a smart thing would be to not always have the waveform play, but instead have a gate here, which we can do with a multiplier and start with 0. And I want the gate to open every time I press this button here. So all we need for that is a line tilde object. And it starts at 0 as well, although that's not very important. Connect it to this. And then, because we get 0s and 1s from this anyway, that's not so bad. You can just hit $1 and then maybe 200. Well, maybe just 100. So that means whatever is the first number that goes into this message box, will be the target value of our ramp generator, and it's going to take the ramp generator 100 milliseconds to get there. So this time I'm just going to take this trigger directly, and now when I enable sound, we can hear that whenever we hit the button that we designated, we're going to hear something, and we can use the pitch already. That's something. Now, to make it a bit more interesting, let's spice it up a little bit. We have the x-axis of the joystick as well. Let's use this to change the frequency of our modulating FM operator here. So instead of taking the same frequency, we're going to multiply this frequency with something. And this something can change. Again, we scale this from 0 to 1. Let's call it send, multiply, whatever. Put it here. Receive the multiply. And then, before we do anything, I think we actually need to move this stuff around a bit because it's kind of getting untidy. All right, so we get inputs from 0 to 1, and we're going to scale them from maybe 1 to 4. One of the really basic things in FM synthesis is that when you use multiples here in the frequency of the modulating oscillator, and those multiples are not whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're going to get sonically very wild and not usually tonally interpretable sounds. So let's just listen to it. Now wait, let's actually look at this. When we have the joystick all the way to the left, it should be just 1, and that's a normal note. And then when you go from 1 to 2, the sound gets very intense. And then at 2, it's going to be tonal again, and then noise, 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 and interpretable again. So well, we might actually want to skip that. And what I did was I assigned another button to be this way, that we have it now whenever you press the button, and only have whole multiples of our carrier frequency when the button is not pressed. So we need a switch. It needs 2 inputs, and the first input is supposed to be open. This is the second input, this is the first input, and this is where it comes out. And then all you need to do, actually this looks horrible. Ugh. Alright, got it. So all you need to do now is take this button here, add 1, and set it in there. So whenever the button is not pressed, inlet 1 is going to be active, and then once you press it, you get a 1, which is converted to a 2, which will open this one. So this is with everything in between, and this is just the whole numbers. Wait, this doesn't really work. We need to do this multiplication only once, but have it after the switch. So that means it has to be like this. All right, so now when we want to get the floating point value, we just take this, and when you want it to be rounded, send it through an integer object first, put it in here, make it look a little bit nicer, maybe like this. Yeah, okay, I can work like that. So now when you press the button, you will get this input, which is the floating point. And when you release it, you will get this input, which is going to be converted to an integer. So you can hear only the integer values and now. And that's the one with all the floating points in between. All right, so this works, finally. Next up we have this movement as well. And I like this to be our modulation index, because right now it's always set at 1.8, and modulation index can go like as high as you want it to, basically. So I'm going to take this input here, send the yaw, then receive it here as yaw, and then maybe take the multiply it by 5 maybe, so we have values from 0 to 5, and then send it directly in here. So now this is, you can hear when you move it to the left, it becomes more dull, and this is more metallic. All right, this works. Now we're actually almost finished. One more thing I like to do is use another button to add some good old-fashioned delay. So for a delay, you need a tap-in object with a maximum number of milliseconds for your delay, and then you need a tap-out object again with your delay time. Do it like this. Then when you want to add feedback, you signal multiply the thing with, I don't know, some kind of feedback value. And then, because I'm a pussy, I like to put a limiter on that, on the whole output of the feedback, because, you know, we don't want it to go overboard. So there you go. Then just grab your sound, and there you go. So sound gets recorded with a maximum number of 1 second delay time. You grab the 100 milliseconds from your delay line, you feed it back, and then it goes through a limiter, so nothing can go really, really wrong. And then we send this to the output as well. And of course, this was stupid, like this. Okay, so now we have our feedback. It will only be triggered when we actually get a sound from here. And now the trick is, let's use this button here to activate the feedback. So we're going to need a signal multiplier, and just take this value here as our right inlet, and take this as our left inlet, and there you go. So now, whenever you press this button here, this delay line can actually record stuff, and that's kind of important because if we had this multiplication at the end of our delay line, that would mean that when you release the button, all the delays that are still fading out would disappear. Whereas now it's a question of when you feed something into the delay line, and then when you stop feeding it, it's still going to give you the last feedback-induced delay lines. So now you can see this is no delay, and then when I activate it, you have feedback, and then when you release it, it's not going to suddenly disappear. 100 milliseconds is not a lot of time, so why not take this thing here from 0 to 1 and use this as our delay time. Maybe add 10, so we never get to very glitchy territory, or maybe 20, and then multiply our 0 to 1 with maybe, I don't know, 600. Okay. So make sure you get something like this. So let's check this out. This is a very long delay line, and this is a very short delay line. Now, one thing you can notice is that whenever you change the delay time, there is a lot of glitching going on. And that's because the tap out object doesn't like getting abrupt value changes. So you use a line tilde, and let's have every input we put here be a line tilde with, I don't know, 20 milliseconds of ramp time. Let's check this out. So you can hear, of course, there are still these pitch shifters, but no glitching pops anymore. That's way better. All right. And that's basically it. You know, just because the sound could use a little bit more peppering up, I recently started using plugins because it's amazing. Look, you can use all your VST plugins in here or your live devices as well. And I found this spectral delay that I really like. Basically what a spectral delay does is it turns your signal into different windows of frequencies, like low frequencies, high frequencies, and depending on which frequency of your sound is being affected, you can apply different long delays to it. So this would mean, for example, that the low frequencies get a very long delay time and the higher frequencies get shorter delay time. So this here is the delay time. And I like to just randomize it a lot. Give it some different feedback as well. Add some more feedback. Make it mostly wet. Give it a range of, I don't know what, something like this. And now our main signal, we instead take from the spectral delay, which I believe is stereo, so we can use, come on, we can use the second outlet as well, like this, put this in here and here. Yeah, so you can hear now that the different frequencies have different delay times. And actually I want to make this load again. And you can see already we get some more interesting sounds. Now you can hear when there is a lot of movement in the sound, you can hear that there is still some glitching, and that's because our pitch input could also use a little bit of interpolation as well as this one here as well. So you might consider making these a bit slower. Maybe add a slide in here. Let's check this out. Whoops. Yep, that's a bit less glitchy as far as I can hear. And then maybe apply the same treatment here, or I would say maybe do it like this. Yeah, and basically that's all I wanted to show you. So go crazy, try out what different results you can get when you change some parameters. For example, have even longer or even shorter delay times, but mostly stuff like try adding a higher modulation index. For example, with a modulation index of 10, you can get way more metallic, aggressive sounds. Or maybe if you want to get deeper into frequency modulation stuff, you might consider adding more modulators. For example, maybe take one, oh, of course this doesn't work, maybe make one more of these gen objects and use this one to modulate the modulator as well, and you will get wildly different results. And basically that's all I wanted to show you. I'm going to jam a little bit more, and I hope you enjoyed the ride and you have a lot of fun making FM sounds by yourself.